Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, DR Congo finally has a prime minister 4 months after President Felix Tshisekedi took over. Meanwhile, formerly exiled opposition figure MOISE KATUMBI returns home, where he's met by thousands of eager supporters. Also, corruption and economic growth are the top issues for voters as they prepare for general elections, which will also pit the incumbent president against his number two in Malawi on Tuesday. We take a look ahead. And marching to her own beat. I'm joined by Kenyan singer and festival producer Muthoni Drummer Queen as she's in Paris on tour following the release of her album, She. Well, 4 months after DR Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi took office and the country finally has a prime minister. Sylvestre Ilunga Ilukamba, the former head of the country's national railways, was named to the role. His appointment is part of a deal struck between President Tshisekedi and his predecessor, Joseph Kabila, who, after 18 years in the top job, still has substantial political clout in the country. Thomas Nicolon tells us more.
It took almost 4 months for President Felix Tshisekedi and his predecessor Joseph Kabila to agree on one name, the name of the new prime minister. They have chosen Sylvestre Ilunga Ilunkamba, who was until today the head of Congo's railway company, but he's been a minister in the past, in the early 1990s under Mobutu Sese Seko's rule. Now, Joseph Kabila had proposed other candidates to Felix Tshisekedi in the past few weeks, but Tshisekedi rejected them all, saying that they were too closely associated with the Kabila era. Now, Mr. Ilunkamba is part of Kabila's political platform, and that was part of the plan because Kabila's platform, the FCC, has a majority of seats in parliament. Now, the new prime minister said that it was a big responsibility and that it was also a crucial moment in the country's history. He says that he will do his best to better Congolese people's lives, and his first mission will be to form a new government in the next few days, something that the Congolese people have been waiting for since January.
Well, Monday also saw the return of opposition leader MOISE KATUMBI to DR Congo. He was pardoned by Tshisekedi earlier this year after having had to flee the country in 2016 over accusations that he'd plotted against Kabila's government. Now, thousands of Katumbi's supporters turned out to welcome him back.
Returning home after 3 years in exile, MOISE KATUMBI was given a hero's welcome as he touched down in Lubumbashi. Surrounded by dozens of supporters, he held the start of a new era for DR Congo.
I have come for peace and reconciliation in our country. The truth has been told. I didn't do anything. I feel at home. I'm back home. I also thank the Congolese authorities for giving me my passport.
Once a close ally of Joseph Kabila, MOISE KATUMBI fell out with the former president and fled the country on the 20th of May 2016. He was later sentenced in absentia to 3 years in prison for alleged property fraud, an accusation he denied and described as politically motivated. He tried to return last year to stand in last December's presidential election, but was blocked at the border with Zambia, prompting him to back Martin Fayulu, who ran as a joint opposition candidate, but eventually lost to Felix Tshisekedi. That defeat actually brought a change of fortune for KATUMBI. Prosecutors overturned his conviction last month and issued him a passport, allowing him to return after 3 years in exile. Speaking to France 24 earlier in May, KATUMBI said it was time to look to the future.
We have to move on. The most important thing for us is to move on. We will be in the opposition to defend the Congolese people. Rebuilding our nation is what's most important.
KATUMBI has yet to make clear what role he plans to play in Congolese politics. He's so far ruled out joining the new government of President Felix Tshisekedi.
Jacob Zuma, South Africa's former president, appeared in court for the fifth time on Monday to face a litany of bribery and graft charges. His lawyers have asked for a permanent stay of prosecution for 16 charges of fraud, racketeering and money laundering in connection to a multi-million-dollar arms deal back in 2009 before he took office. Now, Zuma's time as president from 2009 to 2018 was dogged by accusations of corruption. His lawyers say that he is the victim of a witch hunt and will not be able to get a fair trial.
We think the National Prosecuting Authority subscribes to in the manner in which they have dealt with Mr. Zuma. I called it the mob justice. It's driven and inspired by something all of us in this room have, to varying degrees. It's bias.
Now, at least 8 people have been confirmed dead and dozens more are missing after a boat carrying a Ugandan football team and their fans capsized in Lake Albert. The vessel was reportedly carrying around 60 people from the western district of Hoima when it went down. About 30 people survived. Local authorities say that they have little hope of finding anyone else alive. Now, Malawi is ramping up for general elections on Tuesday. As well as MPs and local leaders, voters will be choosing their president. It's a tightly contested race with incumbent Peter Mutharika heading off challenges from his former vice president and opposition leader. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
Malawi's president, Peter Mutharika, is 78 years old, but he says he's ready for a second mandate. He's one of the 3 favourites in Tuesday's election. During his first term, he was accused of corruption. But his supporters stressed that he developed road infrastructure and that inflation has fallen from 23% to 9%.
It is extremely important to give DPP another 5 years because DPP has developed this country in all the fields of human endeavour, health, education, economy. And in fact, the Quad has stabilized infrastructure development and each and every angle of the country has been developed.
One of his main rivals is Saulos Chilima. He used to be his closest ally and his vice president. He's 46 and a former corporate executive. Chilima hopes to tap into the massive youth vote. More than half of the 6.8 million voters are under 35. The third frontrunner is opposition leader Lazarus Chakwera. He has the backing of former President Joyce Banda. She fled the country for 4 years after losing the 2014 election amid graft allegations that never led to charges. She returned to Malawi last year.
We must end corruption and we must follow the rule of law. And everywhere these things have been received so well that people are ready for change. The ground is ready and we have the figures and we're winning the election.
Results are expected within 8 days. There will be no runoff. Whoever comes first wins the election. In 2014, Mutharika won with just 36% of the vote.
Well, on set with me now is a Kenyan singer who took a look at the wood genre and then threw it out of the window before doing her own thing. Muthoni Drummer Queen takes a bit of rock, reggae, soul, rap, grime, you name it, and mixed it up into something that keeps you on your toes. Well, she's in Paris on tour, and we were lucky enough to nab her for a short while. Before we hear from her, let's, well, hear from her. So, Muthoni Drummer Queen, can I call you MDQ?
Yes, please.
MDQ, that makes me feel very cool. MDQ, thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I was just saying that, again, it was such a pleasure preparing for this interview. I just had all your songs on YouTube just like rolling whilst I was like writing about politics in Africa. It makes a welcome change. So thanks for making time to come in to see us. So one of the things that cropped up when I was looking at some of what was written about the stuff that you've already done is that you see your album She as being a feminist manifesto. Yeah. Is that just marketing or is that actually something that was consciously in your mind as you pulled it all together?
Yeah. So when we started to work on the project, like most artists, we didn't really have a direction. And by we, I mean myself and the two Swiss producers I created the album with. And we were just like making music and jamming. But one of the things that happened is I found that I was writing story character notes for the songs, for the characters in the songs, and that's something that hadn't happened before. And at around song number 7, it became apparent that these were like different women, different really nuance-led stories, really profound experiences. And then it occurred to me that I shouldn't be so surprised that I'm making a feminist album, given that I myself am quite a feminist.
So why would you call it a feminist album rather than just the representation of different female experiences?
That's a good question. I guess because for me, feminism is about understanding the patriarchy and then dismantling it. And at least that's one of the main things. And I find that a lot of the characters in these songs have found ways to their personal identities to release the slavery almost of society's expectations, to build for themselves their own futures. And a lot of it, I think, is really about dismantling what we are told, and especially the expectations of patriarchy on women. And
there was one in particular I was listening to. I can't remember what it's called, like Dear something.
Dear Matilda.
Dear Matilda. Literally, I could feel my back straightening as I was writing. I was like, yes, I'm in control of my own fate. I can definitely see the clarity of each individual character that was being referred to in each song. But would you say that they were reflections of yourself, or were you speaking on behalf of women that you know exist out there?
Yeah, I think I am speaking on behalf of women, some who I know personally or some who I know through, life stories, acquaintances. And then to mix that up with my own perspective and to add the layer of, fantasy, as all good art includes. So it was really an interesting experience for me as a creator to take these things that are so personal and to make them universally relevant. I think it's a really cool experience.
And there's not much in your music that I think could be identified as being like traditionally Kenyan. Do you think that are you part of a growing Kenyan alternative music scene? And is there much room for that kind of music in Kenya?
Yeah, so I've been in the alternative scene in Kenya for some time, and you're right, on She there isn't a lot of traditional music representation. But then there's also the question of, but if you're born in Kenya and you're raised in, the city, and you have all these cultures. Kenya has 42 ethnic communities, so when all these cultures blend and all of them become yours, what do you then represent in the music? Do you maybe just take the melange and make your own thing? That's the route that I've taken for many years. But I deeply want to represent the idea of a global Kenyan. So we are from Kenya, we are globally facing, and the music can resonate with audiences across the board.
Well, people are going to get a chance to see you whilst you're on tour. So you'll be playing in Paris on Tuesday evening at the Bada Boom.
Yeah, tomorrow.
And where do you head to after that?
And then we head to Metz after that, and then we head to Strasbourg. And then we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We're doing a European tour, so we'll
brilliant. Thanks so much, Nikki. Thanks for coming in. Good luck on your tour. It's a real pleasure to speak to you. Even better to use your music to work by. That is unfortunately, though, all the time we have for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care. Awesome. Well, that wasn't...